I have quite literally waited over half of my life for this moment. Dr. Vegapunk, it is an honor to meet you. You're significantly younger and much more breastsome than I suspected you'd be, but this is it. The greatest mind brain in the entire world now stands before us. Every great mystery in this series is but a simple conversation away. But as always, nothing about this is simple. But I was hooked from the very first page because here Eiichiro Oda grabs you by the balls and he says, "Here's a giant mecha shark. It wants to eat you. Good luck." And the page with the shark felt legitimately terrifying. Oda is so damn good at portraying scale and making even the crew of an emperor feel so small and powerless. This one shark panel feels more terrifying than most of the antagonists of the series, and rightfully so. The greatest challenge of One Piece has never been the people that you do all the punch fighting with. It's about the fact that you need to navigate through this apocalyptic world where anything can kill you at any moment. That's the grand line, and that is especially the New World. Scenes like this make me very nostalgic, as did the chapter in general for many reasons. But this reminds me of the days when we first set sail and had absolutely no idea what kind of challenges we were about to encounter. And while it did feel like classic One Piece at all times, my eyes were wide open because of all of the Vegapunk hints. I did not expect anything to do with Vegapunk during this arc. But as soon as I saw the Unk written on the shark, my jaw dropped. I then had to pick it back up, but it immediately dropped again when I saw the robot and it said Vega Force 1. And after that, I just made a conscious decision to leave my jaw on the ground in anticipation. I have to say, for a very brief moment, I thought this thing was actually Frankie Shogun, as if Frankie was about to have a hero moment engaging in some sort of mecha versus mecha combat. I mean, it's very similar because it follows Oda's design philosophy of cool robots. Basically stacked like a titanium Jenga tower on top and itty bitty chicken legs on the bottom. But I'm hoping that this misconception is a sign of things to come. Surely, Frankie is being set up to be a major focal point of this arc, which I know is a dangerous thing to say because if Frankie in the New World were a Charles Dickens novel, then it would be Great Expectations. Brackets, but never met. Closed brackets. Also, this video is sponsored by Raid Shadow Legends, the game that ticks all of the boxes so long as those boxes are champion, tough bosses, millions of players, and general funniness. Raid has all of the things, but now, a new special thing. The new legendary champion, Ultimate Death Knight. One of Raid's most beloved underdogs is finally getting the upgrade he so sorely needs, becoming much more better and deathier than before. A new legendary hero rising up to crush the dreams of regular plain old Death Knight. Sucks to be him. Just log in and play Raid for 7 days between now and October 27th, and you'll receive Mr. Ultimate Death Knight, but you can also use the code DKRises for free items to level him up. But wait, because there is yet another thing. Raid has recently released an awakening feature for champions, radically transforming their battle performance and a brutal new dungeon known as the Iron Twins Fortress. New players use my link or scan the QR code to get a free starter pack worth $30, containing a free champion Vergies and this cool in-game loot. You'll find the rewards here in your inbox for the next 30 days only. So do that thing, but for now it's back to you. Me? This is a now or never moment for Frankie. He's on the most technologically advanced island in existence and has come face to face with his non-consensual mentor. Frankie spent 2 years studying Vegapunk's work. So with the exception of characters like Caesar, Queen, and Judge, he probably knows more about Vegapunk than I guess anyone else on the planet. And I imagine that's definitely why Oda gave Frankie that dialogue at the end of the chapter. The whole "thank you for saving us" thing. It's a small nuance, but Oda generally doesn't have Frankie deliver dialogue like that. He's not the chosen first contact representative of the crew. He mostly just poses in the background and injects with the occasional ow ow ow. So with all of that in mind, I think that we should all sit down with a cola or two and prepare for a Frankie feature. With that said, Jinbei was the undisputed star of the chapter for me. During the whole shark fiasco, Jinbei immediately and appropriately proved his worth as a crew member. Not just by saving them, but in this dire moment effectively taking on the role of the captain when no one else was able to. He issued Frankie an order, he came up with a game plan, but he did not anticipate shark missiles. Rookie error. But to say that Jinbei is well-rounded is both figuratively and literally true. Situations like this actually make me wonder how did we survive so long without him? Water is dangerous. But a new arc has officially begun. Not because we're at a new island, and not because of the onslaught of new characters, but it's because the crew have been split up again. It is impossible to have a new world arc where the crew explore together, although I wish that Oda would have come up with a slightly better way to do it. Because I can't can't help but feel like I've seen the situation before. And that's because we have. Wano began in more or less the exact same way. The ship sailed into some unfriendly conditions, the crew did a bit of a drown, and we woke up split up. What I do like is that the final perspective of this drowning section is through Usopp, which is a great choice because it really amps up the feeling of powerlessness and helplessness and all of the otherlessnesses by focusing on the weakest crew member being engulfed in forces far beyond his control. Meanwhile, we also spend some time on a nearby marine base, which gave me all of the nostalgia for Punk Hazard. Just, so many similarities. We're on a winter island with a member of the worst generation with the giant kids, and Tashigi is also there. It's like we've stepped back in time, but all of these threads are finally coming together. We have Frankie, who spent 2 years on Vegapunk's home island. We also have the Punk Hazard gang, and even Caesar Clown is on the cover, evoking all of the Punk Hazard-y feelings of that lab. And at the end of Dressrosa, Tashigi even told the children that they were going to see Vegapunk, so we're now getting to that, and finally bringing all of this stuff together. All of this stuff that we've spent a whole generation setting up is finally paying off. As a side note, it took me like an embarrassingly long amount of time back in the day to make the connection between Vegapunk and Punk Hazard. So that has made me quite hypersensitive to seeing the word punk or even its component letters. That's why when the shark appeared, I was like, aha, I see it this time. And it was nice to see the Punk Hazard kids again, and there is some commentary about their recovery. Apparently, they're a lot smaller now, although, to be honest, if that hadn't literally been said, I'm not sure I would have noticed. Mokka in particular is still pretty damn huge. And I think the problem is that the giant kidlets were drawn at very inconsistent sizes during Punk Hazard, not just in relation to each other, but also in relation to themselves. Like, there were some times I remember where Mokka would tower over Frankie, but then there were other times where she wasn't much taller than human form Chopper. So as a result, I don't really have an internal scale for them, but I'm glad that they're allegedly returning to normal. And here we are also introduced to a gaggle of new and potentially relevant Marines that, to the best of my knowledge, have not appeared anywhere else in the series to this point. However, I could be wrong about that. I have a notoriously bad memory for like background Marines, and they do seem like the kind of characters who might have shown up in the background of a cover story or something, but I'm like 80% that we've not seen any of them before. Hello everyone, it is Liam from the future here, and I just wanted to make this quick video because I was right about my terrible memory, and as it turns out, Prince and the Prince pals were actually part of Capone's cover story. But I guess any character who isn't Zoro just sort of fades from my mind. Anyway, back to whatever it is I was talking about. Hibari immediately sticks out to me because if this manga was about Kobe, then she seems like the obvious lead female love interest. Although I think my view of that may be poisoned because she looks quite a bit like Noelle from Black Clover. But I feel like I can see a situation where Helmeppo and Hibari go rogue and head to Egghead Island to try and get a hold of a Seraphim. And that is like a whole different layer of its own. I didn't even think about this whilst reading the chapter, but in theory, this island could be housing all of the Seraphim, which immediately makes this location less of a light and fun, eggy adventure and more of an absurdly dangerous one for our pirate dudes. However, the highest ranking new Marine we're introduced to is the commander of G14, Vice Admiral Dole, who from design alone, I imagine would get along very well with King, because of all of the BDSM. But probably the new Marine who interests me most is Rear Admiral Prince. His design is quite striking because it's kind of like a budget Doflamingo vibe, as if the Marines were given a half-an-hour challenge in an op shop to come up with the best Warlord cosplay they could. But I quite like his hat, because it's long. And it's long for like no good reason. The tip it's just stupidly long, and I like it. That is all. I also think it's interesting that he was pointed out as a member of SWORD, whereas Vice Admiral Dole did not have that designation, so she's not in on all of the SWORD-based goodness. It adds a certain element of intrigue, these hidden agents having to act cautiously within their own ranks. One question though, where is Smoker? It's very odd to see Tashigi without her perpetually grumpy chaperone, and the last time we saw him was at the end of Dressrosa, and he was on the ship with Tashigi and the kids on their way to what we now know is Egghead Island. In terms of the in-world timeline, that probably would have been close to, I don't know, like about a month ago. So Smoker may have had to leave to do other marine-y business, I suppose. But Big Eater and now Big News Jewelry Bonnie got a lot of time to shine here, specifically glistening topless on the shores of Egghead. And I'm not a massive fan service person. I mean, I feel like I'm kind of neutral on it, unless it feels really forced and immersion breaking. For example, I would probably classify every single Nami bath or shower scene in that kind of category. To be fair though, Bonnie is the kind of character who would just do this. this. She does not give any craps, which I find much more natural than Oda just finding weird ways to remove Nami or Robin's clothing. It was a really fun interaction though. I love that Bonnie was all like, how dare you not know me? I am the jewelry Bonnie and I am also one of the worst. Which I feel is almost directed at the readers because she is probably the most forgotten about Worst Generation member. Hence why I suppose Oda was making a big impression here with the nakedness. And Luffy instantly gave her a nickname which, according to the Luffy name theory, means that Bonnie has no chance of joining the crew. Regardless though, this chapter is going to start a whole new series of Straw Hat campaigns. Because I've also been seeing a lot of Vegapunk for Nakama talk because that's what happens every time a new pretty lady thing is introduced. Speaking of though, our dear Bonnie has business with our maybe dear Vegapunk, and I feel like that's obviously to do with Bartholomew Kuma. Bonnie went all the way up to Marijois, probably discovered that there was no saving Kuma, and now she's had to come all the way back down to confront the person who did this to him in the first place. It could be deeper than that, could also be a lot more shallow than that, but that's likely our general direction. I do like this quartet we formed though. Jinbei especially, as the newest crew member, needs as much time as he can get involved in a classic Straw Hat adventure romp, whereas if he were left with the larger clump of the crew, he likely wouldn't be able to have anywhere near as much focus. But the thing I'm looking forward to most is the dynamic between Bonnie and Luffy, because as soon as we hit a moment where food is involved, that is the potential for chaos. Now that Big Mom has taken up a career as a magma swimmer, Bonnie is probably the only person in this world who can rival Luffy's sheer propensity for gluttony. I mean that and I suppose Warpole. But apart from food, these two don't seem like natural enemies. Bonnie's goals don't necessarily clash with Luffy's, so we probably have another Tsundere alliance incoming. But now for the wildest part of the chapter, at the very end we get introduced to the elusive Dr. Vegapunk. The biggest possible subversion, thinking that we were in for some sort of old man, but what we got was a young girl. First thing though, this is definitely not the original and potentially not even the real Vegapunk. I mean look, there's a bunch of people on the internet trying to sound smart right now going, yeah, like I always knew that Vegapunk was going to be a young woman because I am the best. Despite the fact that in the series he has been repeatedly referred to and shown as an old man. To me it seems like we have a more advanced Frankie situation happening. The 02 label may indicate that Vegapunk has moved his consciousness into a new body, probably to combat the whole getting old thing. Plus the silhouette we saw of Vegapunk on Punk Hazard had that literal egghead thing going. So either this is a new Vegapunk body or he is controlling this thing from afar. My initial reaction to the design was honestly that it looks a lot like Uta. And that's probably just because the last few months have bombarded me with film red promotional material, so much so that I am utterly sick of seeing Uta. But as a result, she's still very fresh in my mind brain. However, there are a lot of similarities with the whole slender cute girl wearing bulky jacket and having like technologically advanced earphones and things. There's also some Reiju vibes as well with the earphones and the hair covering one eye. In essence though, it is a very standard Oda design. I definitely don't think it's the most exciting thing in the world, and if Vegapunk's name wasn't attached to it, then it would probably be very forgettable. However, what gives this section a lot of promise is that this smiling girl is in fact a declared enemy. We're on an island run by a brilliant mad scientist who works for the people who are not us, although I do wonder how long that will last. Vegapunk's morality has been quite a puzzle over the course of One Piece. On the one hand, yes, he does build super weapons for the evil government, but on the other, he does genuinely kind things like helping out Kuma or even the inhabitants of his home island. And I'm incredibly curious to know what the reaction will be when he discovers that these are the Straw Hat Pirates, or even if that matters at all. I mean, the only reason why it might is because he did program Kuma to defend their ship, but the future holds endless possibilities. For example, are we going to see the return of Sentomaru, who was and presumably still is Vegapunk's chonk bodyguard? We've been waiting an awfully long time for him to be in some way relevant again, and having him on the island would seriously add to the danger alongside the Seraphim. At the moment, I feel like Vegapunk won't turn out to be a grand enemy though. And a lot of that is because of Oda's words in SBS Volume 48, when he was talking about devil fruits and he said, "For more detail, you'll just have to wait for a certain professor to make his appearance in the story and explain exactly what devil fruits really are, eventually." For some perspective, that was published in 2007, so that eventually turned out to be 15 years. Also, this was the SBS in which Oda revealed Chopper's form after eating 4 Rumble Balls, which is a glorious sight in and of its own. But that is why Vegapunk is so damn exciting. Any week now, we could be discovering the full truth behind how devil fruits work and where they originally came from. One of the corest of mysteries in the entire series is going to be solved during this very arc. Meanwhile, the mystery of what you should watch next has already been solved by me, so I look forward to seeing you there.